Hey there, welcome, or hopefully welcome back. This next module sets the stage for how generative AI, and obviously specifically GitHub Copilot, fits into a modern developer's day-to-day workflow. Rather than focusing on just the theory, this module is all about practical use cases, where Copilot shows up during development and how it actively supports you as a developer, DevOps engineer, and cloud admin. I'm Peter Detender, lead technical trainer here at Microsoft. By the end of this module, you will clearly understand that GitHub Copilot isn't a standalone tool, but it's really embedded directly into the development experience. The key benefit of this module is relevance. Copilot operates in context within the tools that you as a developer, like yourself, is already using, helping you move from idea to implementation faster and with greater confidence. As always, we begin the module with an outline of what you will gain and why it matters. The focus is on understanding how GitHub Copilot integrates naturally into a developer workflow, enabling developers like yourself to work in ways that align with the personal coding style rather than imposing a new process or a different toolset. The module also introduces more practical skills, such as crafting prompts and configuring GitHub Copilot inside GitHub code spaces. Now this slide here examines how GitHub Copilot improves productivity by supporting documentation, learning, and routine coding tasks. Copilot can generate inline comments, as you already saw before, function descriptions, but also generating README files, making it super easy for anyone to explain and maintain code without breaking focus. Another significant benefit highlighted here is reduced context switching. Instead of constantly searching documentation or finding examples online, developers receive suggestions directly in the editor. This again leads to faster learning when working with maybe different development languages or different frameworks, and helping developers, cloud admins, stay in that flow while you're writing your codes or scripts. And then here it's all about aligning with developer preference. It's actually one of my favorite messages. The way to understand this is that it emphasizes once more that flexibility. GitHub Copilot adapts to your preferred workflow. For refactoring, debugging, Copilot identifies patterns, it suggests cleaner alternatives, it helps in explaining errors in plain understandable language, and even recommends helpful logging statements. Copilot also supports code generation, allows you bringing in testing as well as documentation, offering multiple suggestions to ensure developers to retain control. The value is not automation for automation's sake. It's all about giving you different choices, accelerating routine tasks, and improving code quality without removing human judgment. If you've been here since the start of the course, or perhaps you've seen other videos from me on our Microsoft Worldwide Learning YouTube channel, you know that I not only like to explain concepts, but also enjoy demonstrating them through live demos. This specific demonstration sequence I will use will illustrate how Copilot can generate code snippets using chat, using inline comments, using ghost text, and how it can transform existing code. The key takeaway for this section is versatility. Whether it's about documenting code, explaining functionality, or even restructuring logic, Copilot works across multiple interaction models. So for this next demo, we're going to jump in a little bit more into what I call specific developer use cases. Now, does it mean that the previous demos in other modules that hopefully you watched as well are not all that useful? Well, obviously I hope they are, but we showed how to use it to generate documentation, get some explanation about your code, helping you clarifying certain steps, walking you through different parts of your process, but we didn't really change a lot in the code yet. So that's where I'm going to switch onto my developer hat and walking through actual code changes. Now, as a good developer, I would say one of the first things when you want to start writing code is creating a new branch. So in one of the previous demos, we talked about GitHub Copilot CLI, and I think I can show you something else, because what we did in that video is going into the repo and then running Copilot, but to me it feels a bit like that's a step too far. Why? Because I like using the terminal. So what I did is actually a little trick and creating a dedicated terminal for GitHub Copilot. So how do you do that? You go into your terminal settings, and from here, after obviously you install Copilot CLI, you can just trigger it using PowerShell and then calling that Copilot command. The nice thing is now that I can select a new terminal, and it's going to move me straight into CLI, asking for admin permissions. And that's saving me some typing because I don't need to launch Copilot from the folder or the repo that I'm in. So from here, I'm going to show you how to rely on Copilot to help me creating a branch. In the background, it's using Git source control, but I'm not that good in memorizing commands. So I'm just going to ask how to create a new Git branch, and let's call it the live GH-300 branch, where it's going to think about it for a couple of seconds. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Now what it does here is telling me, based on my prompt, this is the command, how you do this. And then it's providing some additional steps, like this is how you create it, this is how you can check it out, meaning switching from one branch to the other. And I don't need to memorize any of that. Where now we could actually take it one step further. Can you help me creating this branch? Where now it's no longer that just asking mode, but now we can actually start triggering automation. And if you looked at the agenda of the different modules, we do have a module on more advanced scenarios with agents all the way at the end, but you don't always need to switch to agent mode specifically to actually trigger actions. Where now it's just asking confirmation, like, hey, do you want me to use the command? And it's executing it, and we just need to confirm, yes, go ahead. All using that natural language, so we don't need to memorize any complex commands. We just go through it, we confirm. It's almost like talking to a colleague, maybe providing instructions. Tell your colleagues how to do their job right. But now it's like, cool, it's done. We created a new branch, and you can start using it from here. By the way, another thing that we talked about is switching models, where I showed it from within VS Code, but you can actually do that from here as well. So you can do /, and that's going to show you the list of all the different commands you can use. One of them is model, and maybe you like memorizing things, but I don't. So I'm just going to hit enter, and it's going to show me all supported models, and supported means enabled in my GitHub Copilot plan. So if I want to switch from like the Claude model that we have into like GPT-5, I can just select it, and now I can continue with all my prompts using that model and continuously switching back and forth. So just another little help tool out of the command line. I'm going to switch back to my VS Code. So from our Copilot CLI actions, where it created the live GH branch, refreshing VS Code, and you can see that we're now live in that new branch. So worked out so far. What we're going to do now is making some changes in the application. And if you remember, we have a little school website where we allow students to register for activities. And one of the things that I think was missing is not having email domain validation. Now, if you missed any of the previous videos, let me quickly spin up my app. So this is the website, and over here we can enter our email address, but as you can see, if I try to register as a Microsoft employee, not being a student of this school, everything works fine. So might be a little bit confusing, right? Because most probably the high school only wants to have actual students signing up for activities. So we're going to ask Copilot to just help us with that. So the way to do that is, again, using our natural language. I'm going to grab a little prompt because I don't want to bore you with typing in the full comments. But what I'm asking for is, can you add validation to ensure that only the merging.edu email addresses can sign up? I don't need to point to any specific files. I don't need to look into the code base. I'm just going to ask my prompt, and I don't even need to worry where it's going to apply all those changes. I'll make it again a little bit bigger so we can follow along what's happening. So it's going to look into the app. We have the main app, the backend in the Python file, updating the code changes. Move a little bit further down, we got the application JavaScript, and then all the way down it's going to add some cosmetics into it and updating HTML. So we're going to move all the way up, and then making sure that if we activate those changes, that we're not doing this in an untitled file, because we already have those code files. So just emphasizing that we still need humans for now to make sure that we're making changes in the correct files. So I open the app Python file, and I'm okay in overriding it. I'm going to keep the changes, doing the same for my JavaScript file, applying all the changes. And obviously for the demo, I'm sort of taking a bit of a risk because I'm just trusting code. I'm not even looking into it. But obviously in a real world scenario, the recommendation is not just trusting the output, but also spending some time on validating it. Confirming for the index HTML. We got a nice explanation, like this is the summary of all the changes. And I guess if I restart my app, we should have a pretty nice validation. Let's do some gym class. I can use it. There we go. And it's now nicely telling me, including some nice HTML setup, that I'm not allowed to sign up. So pretty easy, pretty cool, but already rewriting a big part of our application. Now, in the presentation, we also talked about using code spaces. Now, I cannot assume that all of you know what GitHub Code Spaces is about, so you can imagine I got another little demo for that. So what is Code Spaces in short? It's like VS Code in the browser running on GitHub hosted virtual machines. So I switch back to my source repo for my sample app, and you would typically go into the code button, cloning it to your local machine, where now we can activate code spaces. If you're on a free plan, you can use code spaces as some sort of a tryout for a couple of hours per month. And obviously, if you are on an organizational enterprise plan, then it's your backend team deciding what kind of compute power for how many hours you could use it. Now, what it's doing here is actually pretty powerful. So first of all, it's all browser-based, which means you could basically develop from everywhere in the world on any kind of machine, as long as you have internet and a browser. That's basically all you need. It's recognizing the full repository with all the different branches. The full source control history is there. And as you can see here on the side, our Copilot friend is waiting to be used. Now, one of the steps that I always recommend here is validating that it's actually working fine. And it's not like, oh, is it not 100% fail-safe to use? It's just like maybe, as you can see, it's loading some stuff in the backend, and we might need to just have a confirmation. So we can do a little greeting, like hello, Copilot, to just make sure that the license got picked up, your account is activated. That's really what I'm trying to do here. And as you can see, it needs a little bit more time. I think Copilot is ready. My code has been loaded, and let's make another change across different files in the app, where this time I want to add like a search bar. We have all the activities that we worked on in one of the previous demos, and imagine if that list is becoming pretty large, pretty long, it's becoming a bit more challenging. So let's just use again our natural language approach, where now my prompt is add a search bar above the activities list. I'm not specifying anywhere in code where I want it to end up. And then it needs to filter activities real time, which means when I'm start typing, it's already shortening that list. I have personally no idea how to do this. I know we use JavaScript. I know we use Python. I'm not sure which files I need to change. And now I don't have to worry about any of that anymore. Now the experience from here is obviously identical to what I already showed you in VS Code earlier. So it's going to think about it, doing again some reasoning. We can still switch the models. Exact same experience, nothing is different, but just all browser-based. Recommending the changes, and you can find out obviously here. We could apply all the changes, but you've seen that happening multiple times, so not going to bore you with that. But that's in short what CodeSpaces is about, and Copilot is already immediately integrated. Now another example that we have is doing even more, I would say, powerful, amazing, impressive developer work, and that's switching or transforming code. So what is transforming code? We're currently using Python and JavaScript, and if you watched any of the previous videos, you know that Peter feels a little bit more comfortable using .NET. So what I can do is starting a new chat conversation, and I'm just going to ask Copilot to help me rewriting this application or transforming it into .NET syntax. So I stopped my runtime, my debugging, just to make sure that there's no files getting blocked. And I'm going to use another pretty easy prompt, if you ask me, where I'm going to call out that add workspace again, like telling Copilot, I want you to look into the totality of all the code files, help me transforming code from Python to .NET, and then preferably using the latest framework. And on top of that, because I don't want to become familiar with totally new code, I'm adding, if possible, integrate the existing CSS for keeping the layout, keeping the style, but only if it's not breaking the app. If you watched the previous sessions on prompting techniques, then this is also a little bit what I'm trying to show you here, that by being more specific, being more explicit, what you want Copilot to help with, what is the goal, it's obviously making it a little bit more straightforward. So it's again doing the full analysis, looking at the totality of the project, and from here it starts running. And we're still in ask mode, which means I'm in the driver's seat. I can decide if we want to do this, yes or no. So what we have now is, instead of providing just code like updating code file, remember that little plus button that we can use, it's now showing me that it can actually run tasks in the terminal. Now I'm still controlling this. I just need to click on it and it's going to move that command step, in this case .NET New, creating like a new .NET application using just the web template for now, moving into that folder. And as you can see, we do have some boilerplate code. So from here, it's telling me, open the program CS file, and then we can start applying all those changes. In my code view, obviously we do have this new folder. I open up my program CS. I'm going to override it. And we're doing the same for all those files. So after going through all those manual steps, creating the new files, And what I did here, just to be fully transparent, I moved everything out into a dedicated .NET folder. Well, now obviously as a good developer, we rewrite code where now we want to validate that it is actually working, and I could probably rely on Copilot for that, but I still remember a little bit of writing code that I can do .NET run to start up the application. And we can see that it's the exact same website. We didn't change anything. We just rely on that transforming natural language approach-based request. It picked up all the code. Python got transformed into .NET. And if we go back into the W root, you can see that the JavaScript is still there, the index is there, and the cascading style sheet without making any changes. So reapplying the code that we have as long as it is fully supported. Now, one little catch here is that when I look into my project file, it's picking up .NET 9. Now, depending a bit when you're watching this video, you might know that .NET 9 is not the latest version, although I explicitly asked for that. Now, the reason why is, remember, the intelligence for now is based on the large language model, where the large language model was not aware about .NET 10 because it got released pretty recently. But I think this is quite successful. One last prompt in our development example is now optimizing code. Now, what is optimizing code? You know I'm not a developer, but I had to prep for my demos. No, I'm joking. I had to dig in a little bit into .NET like about 4 years ago. And one of the chapters in any of the books that I was reading at that time was, let's move to optimizing code, which means what about security? What about reliability? What about performance? And there's, yes, a couple more. So let's see how intelligent Copilot is to help me with that. I'll make it, again, a little bit bigger. My colleague asked me to optimize code. What does that mean? Again, a pretty high-level prompt where I want to make sure that Copilot can, first of all, help me clarifying like this is the prompt. And as you can see, there's little typo in there purposely to show you that typos don't really matter. Now it comes back here and it tells me like, well, optimizing code generally means fixing performance, maintainability, efficiency. So the list is actually longer than what I mentioned. Now to provide it a little bit more of a scope using the art of the prompt that we talked about before, I'm going to ask, can you help me for this code, identify code optimization, categorize security, reliability, and performance. So it's now nicely categorizing the different options that I asked for, starting with security, and actually quite impressive if you ask me. Even for our little sample app, it already found like 5 optimizations. Then one additional for my JavaScript front end, about the same for reliability and the same for performance. Another little cool trick that I discovered when running this in my live environment is, for example, not even memorizing that full list. Now, these are a lot of different steps, right? So imagine that now as a developer, you start working on this, you're going to create your GitHub issues, you get your sprints, your iterations, and then you go through the list of tasks. But most probably this is going to take you a couple of hours, so I'm not going to walk you through all those updates. But imagine it's like Thursday afternoon, you're working on step number 2, the weekend is upcoming, next week you got pulled in to fix some like a break and fix issues, and only in 3 weeks from now, you want to go back to that list. Where then you go like, well, do I need to rerun those prompts? I don't remember exactly where I was. You don't need to remember any of that. Remember, using Copilot, it's all about working in the same way, but a lot more efficient. So what that means is, from the top menu here, we can go back to previous chats. And yes, obviously in my setup here, this is happening all live, but I could easily go back to previous chats you could start new chat windows and pulling up like in any possible time. Now remember, we also talked about Copilot policies, where in my environment, I get access to the chat history for about 30 days. Maybe in your organizational setup, it might be slightly different. Next to that, I could now go, let's tackle the security topic 4. We have a super long list, about 20 different code changes for the different optimization categories. And now I could just go through that list and maybe starting with topic 2. Or another fun one is asking, out of that list of security optimizations, can you start with the most critical one? And it's going to identify and sort of being aware what would be the most critical code change. I showed you again quite a lot. This was focusing on the developer tasks, so primarily helping even more rewriting code. Next to that, transforming code from Python into .NET, keeping some of the source files identical, testing the app, integrating branches, and then all the way at the end here, moving into code optimization. I described this in like 20 minutes. This could be like 1 day of developing work. So with that, let's move back to the presentation. This slide positions GitHub Copilot across the entire software development lifecycle, or what we would call DevOps, not just code writing. It's also why I try to address you on the other side of the camera as more than just a developer. If you're using a scripting language such as PowerShell, Bash, Azure, AWS CLI, maybe you're using JSON files, YAML pipeline code, Bicep, Terraform, or similar tools, Copilot assists with boilerplate generation, as well as design patterns during the early development, and then later on helping with optimize, translate, and refactor code as your applications evolve. It also contributes to quality and maintenance by generating unit testing, which, by the way, we'll cover in much more detail in the next module. But then identifying edge cases during unit test context and suggesting bug fixing. Again, the benefit is continuity. Copilot supports the whole DevOps team from planning through development and long-term maintenance, making it a consistent companion rather than that one-off tool. Now with all that, let me show you multiple examples of that value that GitHub Copilot brings far beyond writing application code by focusing on additional DevOps scenarios. This demonstration will show you how Copilot can generate infrastructure as well as automation artifacts, including a few examples like CLI scripts, Docker files, infrastructure as code, CI/CD pipelines. For DevOps engineers and platform teams overall, this heavily reduces friction, but it accelerates setup tasks. The key benefit is speed with accuracy. That's where Copilot helps teams scaffold and refine operational code quickly while still allowing engineers to validate and adjust the output. So for this next demo, it's still all about code writing, code rewriting, but taking it a little bit into the more what I described as the DevOps cases. So what is DevOps to me? It's everything that's not writing application code. So for example, we have the application. I'm going to reuse my .NET example that we just transformed in the previous demo. And we did the test of the code, which means the app is working. And now it's like the developer handing over the task to the DevOps team, where, for example, maybe we want to run this in a Docker container. Maybe we want to move this into Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, Kubernetes, anything like that, where I can just rely again on Copilot to help me with all those different tasks. So I prepped a prompt for it, and again showing you the power of prompting, where obviously I could run a prompt. Can you help me create a container? Can you help me create a pipeline syntax? Can you help me describe the different Azure command line options? But if we know that as a DevOps team, this is the scoping of my project, well then maybe why not combining all of that in one single prompt? So I'm going to grab my sample prompt. I'm going to move it into Copilot. So what I'm asking here is, first of all, I'm confirming the app is working as expected. Not really sure if we need to do that, but I just like to provide a bit more information to Copilot. Remember, we have that conversational context. So we need to bring this into our DevOps team and perform the following tasks. I can make it a little bit more clear. Step number 1, run it locally in a container. I have no idea. I don't provide any details how to do this. Step number 2, push the container image to Azure using Azure command line because I'm a little bit more comfortable with that than, for example, Azure PowerShell. And then last, since we're using GitHub, I also want to automate the full step using a multi-stage pipeline. Again, this can be 3 different prompts. This could be even more complete, more specific. But what I want to show you here in this part is that it starts, as always, with analyzing code, making sure that it knows what's happening, which in this case means it's going to check my .NET application project, and based on that, it's coming up with, as you can see, Docker files, Docker ignore, Azure CLI, and GitHub Actions. I'm stepping in with an assumption here that you are a little bit familiar with Docker to actually run your containers. Just an example. Even if you've never used Docker before, you've never seen Docker before, the main goal here is showing you that based on my super high level prompt, like I want to run this in a container, it decided to use Docker to do that. It came up with a Docker file and it's going to recognize the project. It's going to move all the different steps into that Docker file. And this is 100% reusable. And again, you're still in control, which means if you want to make changes to it, if you want to add more functional testing, for example, into those steps, you can still update code. If we move down a little bit more, it came back with a Docker ignore file to not copy everything inside the container. And then from there, the next objective was provide me Azure CLI, where I think now it's literally trying to show off, like, look how powerful I am, because it's not just giving me 1 or 2 lines of code, it's giving me a full CLI script that I can run. It recognizes the resource group. It allows me to modify the location, coming up with an app service plan, the web app name, using the image from the Docker container. So that's where that conversational context is now really powerful. Because I started with create me or help me creating the Docker container, where then in the next step, give me the CLI comments, where now it's like, oh, I created the Docker container, so the assumption is that you want to run this container inside the Azure platform. And then for the third aspect of it, although I didn't ask for it, it's like, well, I'll be nice and I'll give you the PowerShell version, pretty cool. Because in the end, I asked pretty high level Azure CLI, but you have Bash and PowerShell, so it's not even distincting here. And then last, it's giving me the GitHub Actions pipeline. I'm not going to bore you with copy pasting, creating all those files, actually deploying it, because if you go like, well, I like GitHub Copilot, but I'm not an Azure customer, then obviously from here, I could actually, why not show you, like, oops, mistake, not really a mistake, but I just like joking every now and then with Copilot. We are using Azure DevOps pipelines. Can you transform the GitHub Actions code? And as you can imagine, it's going to do a pretty good job in transforming everything like that. So now it also means that why not? You could start using it as your migration assistant. A lot of customers are moving from Azure DevOps into GitHub, sometimes from GitHub still back into Azure DevOps. Totally fine, nothing wrong with that. There's no message here about you need to migrate away from the platform. Just showing you that in my case, YAML syntax was still one of the challenging points in using Azure DevOps for years, moving to GitHub Actions. And now again, since it's all syntax-based, data-based, it's actually becoming a lot easier. I think that's pretty much it on what I can show from DevOps in VS Code, but I got 2 more scenarios that I can show you from within my GitHub environment. In your developing scenario, in your DevOps scenario, we typically work with branches, we typically work with code updates, and that means we're going to use pull requests. One of the vital steps in a pull request is obviously you as development team, DevOps team, watching over all the code changes using reviews. I'm in another sample project because I didn't really make a lot of changes in the existing ones, didn't really have pull requests. But what we can do here is for any pull request in any possible project, we can now flag Copilot as our reviewer. You cannot use it yet, I would say, as an integration with policies. So what that means is in your GitHub backend, you can define a policy that any pull request before you can merge it needs typically 2, but maybe more reviewers, which up till now was always human beings. And as you can see here, we can now create a combination where Copilot is now becoming one of them next to our development team. So I flag Copilot as the reviewer, and it's going to trigger the task. It's going to loop through and it's going to provide a detailed conversation about what it actually discovered. It's a bit what you see here, where it's going to loop through, it's going to validate like this was the old code, these are the code changes, and then a little bit further down, it's coming back with a more descriptive detail. This is what happened in the code, this is the suggestion, this is what we're going to change. And honestly, if I had to do this for the last couple of years in pull request reviewing, it was never that detailed. So again, another little gimmick where it can be used as an assistant. Last example in the DevOps is pipelines. In the previous step, we created a pipeline. And again, I didn't show you how to move it into actions because it's not really part of the Copilot training that I'm providing here. But you can imagine that not all pipelines are successful from the first attempt. So that's where, again, you need to troubleshoot. You need to look into why is this not working. And a few weeks ago, I actually discovered by coincidence that now we do have Copilot available here as well. So I got my pipeline. This is another repo, not from my school activity website, but I run a build and test working fine, deploying it to Azure, and as you can see, it's not working fine. I can look into the actual logging, I can look in the details, and it's telling me like, well, the content for this response was already consumed. Well, I have no idea what that means. And I also can see that deployment failed. Well, that's no fun because that's the whole point of having pipelines in the first place. And then again, I discovered this little explain error. I recognized Copilot. I just open it up and it's 100% embedded in the portal. It's providing a really detailed prompt and it's going to help me looping through the different problems in my pipeline code. It's going to tell me like, well, apparently the problem is coming from your web app bicep, like the template-based deployment, where I'm running some CLI commands and the validation was failing. From there, move to the next step. And in the end, it's going to tell me how to fix the problem. Taking maybe a couple of minutes, but definitely saving me a lot more time than me digging in, checking all the files, trying again, running the pipelines again. So it's now becoming a troubleshooting assistant as well. So that I'm going to wrap it up here, switching back to the presentation. But what I covered in the demo is how to use GitHub Copilot for different DevOps scenarios. Wasn't that cool? As a technical trainer, I spend a significant portion of my day working with Azure CLI, DevOps pipelines in Azure DevOps and GitHub, which is highly relevant to my work. I'm doing the same tasks as before Copilot, but now I can complete them much faster. While I'm highly excited and often still mind blown even by its power and capabilities, this slide here emphasizes a vital balance. While GitHub Copilot is powerful, it's still not perfect. Performance can vary across programming languages and frameworks, especially in more niche or emerging technologies. It also reinforces that responsible usage. Generated code may contain logic errors or maybe bring in security vulnerabilities, and it should always be reviewed regularly. Copilot honestly excels at code-level assistance, but complex architectural decisions and creative problem-solving remain firmly in human hands. Highlighting Copilot is that assistant. It's not a replacement. This brings me to the end of this module. So let's bring everything together by once more reinforcing what we explored. Copilot's impact on productivity, workflow integration using code spaces, and practical prompt engineering techniques. It also emphasizes a forward-looking mindset. Developers, again, like yourself, are encouraged to evaluate how exactly AI-assisted coding affects your work continuously, and then balance automation with human creativity and judgment. Copilot is that powerful accelerator. It's not a shortcut to thinking. There are many ways to continue your learning. GitHub Copilot is only one of the many stops on your broader journey. Microsoft Learn, available through ak.ms/learn, offers many additional topics and paths to explore. I want to thank you for being here with me in this use case-oriented module. There's still a little bit more to talk through, so once more, allow me to invite you to join me to the next module, where we're going to take a little step back into the specific developer-focused world, detailing the concepts of unit tests, which to me is still one of the more complex aspects in the already complex world of developing software. Maybe take a brief break, refill your coffee, maybe you need an energy drink. You might actually need it, right? I'll see you again soon.